Hey folks, Ariel over here. Since I am still just dreaming about it not being way below freezing and being able to plant things in my garden, I wanted to share something with you that I actually filmed the previous fall when I was visiting my parents last October? I think it was last October when I was at their place. Anyway, I had filmed this and I just was busy all winter and never got around to sharing it with you, but it goes over a little bit of one of their, not really their garden that they actually produce their own food in, but one of their projects that they do for some extra income. And I thought that might interest some of you guys because that's something I get questions about. Well, if you are gonna, live a more sustainable kind of lifestyle and want to have to work outside the home less, what all can you do to make that possible? So this is just one idea for those of you guys interested in that. And then it may, if you want to grow a lot of tomatoes yourself, it may just be interesting. So here are my parents who are responsible for teaching me a whole lot of the things that I do know. And I thought you might enjoy seeing their tomato project. Hey guys, this is Ariel, not at Nyth today, as you can probably tell. I am actually at my parents' place in Pennsylvania, where my mother and father do some market gardening starting this year. They always garden growing up, but this is the first time they've been doing it for resale, really. And so I wanted to give you a look at what they do and why.
So I'm Daniel McLaughlin, my wife Susan. We decided to do market gardening for some tomatoes and some root crops and kale. Is there anything else that we did in the garden for market? Lettuces.
And some rhubarb.
We had rhubarb in growing already, and the person who we're selling to saw that and said, well, she could sell some of that as well. So we sold some of our rhubarb that was in our existing stand. I guess perhaps we should start with how we got started. We know some people who have an established business, a farm market, where they sell produce from this area of Pennsylvania down into the restaurant markets in Washington, D.C. So they sell direct to the restaurants. By hooking up with somebody who already has an established marketing area, we don't have to develop that side of the business. And quite frankly, it's not something that either of us particularly view ourselves as very competent, or at least would be successful at, to go out and develop the markets and sell directly to the people. So we decided to do tomatoes. We talked to them about what types of things that they would have available, and tomatoes was one of the things. Why don't you tell them about the types of tomatoes we grew and why those particular ones?
Okay. First of all, they said if we did tomatoes, we would need to grow them in a hoop house because that just cuts down on a lot of the disease because you keep the moisture off the leaves. So Daniel was willing to put up a hoop house for me. And they needed heirloom and cherry tomatoes grown. So we have all colors of heirloom and all colors of cherry because the restaurants want the colors for making their dishes pretty.
There was a hoop house that was floating around these brokers, growers, and so we became the recipient of that. They'd used 1-inch PVC tubes. As we go through the house, you can see the hoops that are made of the 1-inch PVC pipe. We had put that up. We got it finished. We got the tarps put over top of it, everything tied down. And was it that evening or the next day, there was a snowstorm, about 8 inches of snow. We thought about coming out and sweeping it off, but we said, well, it's a hoop house, it'll slide off the edges. But I believe the way I did some internal things, created some flat spots in the roof. So the next day, about a third of our house was crushed to the ground. The hoop spars broken, had plastic punctured and such. So when we rebuilt, we bought galvanized steel fence rail. That would be the same type of pipe that would be used at tops of galvanized or chain link fences. We ended up using every other hoop made out of galvanized pipe, and then I did a change internally to help present more of a peak in our hoop house than had been before. But it never snowed 8 to 10 inches after that, so I don't have any further experience yet. we plan to get that in the winter. My son helped me build the ends here. The hoops, you can see the hoops over here above the door anyway. And then we just built a 2x4 frame that fills the end. We decided we wanted a wide enough door and a tall enough door to walk through. So we made the doorway horizontally as far as it would fit from the one hoop to the other, and then built 2 door leaves. We covered the ends of that with plastic as well. On the top of this pipe there is I don't know what it's called wiggle wire track, I guess. It's an aluminum channel with like a C-shaped channel that's bolted to the pipe. If you come around the corner, you can actually see what that, I'm gonna come around the corner of the greenhouse here. What it is a C-channel that you stretch your plastic over, and then there's like a zigzag wire, spring wire that you just fit in there, and that clamps it tight. So we brought our layer of plastic from the hoop in, put a wire in, and when we set our face on the end of the hoop house, we just stretch the plastic back over it and put the wiggle wire in. When we put the plastic on the door, we had the doors shut, the hinges and everything in place, and so the plastic sheet is just continuous across the doors. Once everything was stapled down with this little tape here, so that a batting to help hold the staples from pulling through the plastic, we simply used a utility knife and cut the plastic around the doors. So we have a hinge right here of the plastic so that it reduces the air leakage in the winter is the thought. During the summer it started getting warmer. We did this triangular area here, we simply cut the plastic here and let the flap lay down. That let more heat be able to escape higher in the building. This is about the highest point in the hoop. So with these 2 triangles cut out of both ends, we didn't cut all 3 sides out. The idea that we could do what we did last night, we could fold it back up and tape it back in place as it gets cooler to prevent the heat loss that way. The posts that hold the door are simply just pieces of EMT plastic, that's conduit. We just have a piece with 2 clamps here and a little bent piece on the end as a handle, and so we can just poke that down on the ground, and it helps stabilize the door from moving back and forth. Come on in and I'll show you some more of the structure of the greenhouse. So here's a plastic hoop. We have a metal peg, piece of rebar stuck in the ground, hammered in the ground, and we put the end of the hoop over it. We bend it, plastic is flexible, so we bend it over and catch another rebar poked in the ground at the other side. Where we have our metal hoops, right here, again we have a bar in the ground. The metal is preformed. We buy them from a supplier, greenhouse supplier, who has them already bent to this shape. There are companies who have tools, bending jigs and such, that you can bend your own should you be inclined to do that. For us, it was simply easier to purchase them pre-bent. The overall width of this greenhouse is about 12 feet. The height of it is about 7.5 feet. So, other than the hoops and a corner brace I can show you about once you come on inside, we ended up putting some PVC as purlins across the top. So what we did is we got some clamps. I used, first of all, just some strapping material and tightened it down with a bolt that was part of the first house. When I rebuilt the house, I went ahead and bought purpose-built greenhouse clamps, purlin clamps, that the 2 of them clamp together. These are designed for 1-inch pipe to 1-inch pipe. But our purlins, to save costs, I just used a 3/4 inch EMT electrical conduit. After we had this up, we were thinking about what we were going to hang our tomatoes on. And so this cable that was added, as I was putting them up, I should say, we put little pieces of 1/2 inch EMT in here to be a channel. Well, actually, this was just as a spacer to fill this up with, to simulate the 1-inch pipe diameters. After the fact, we went ahead and added this bit of 1/8 inch steel cable You could also use a heavy gauge wire, stretching the length of the house. I used the cable because I figured it'd be a little easier to tighten once we got it in place. The purpose for that, as you can see, is we have these hooks that hang our tomatoes. So they hang from there. The wrappings, the bumpiness of the cable helps wedge tighter into these hooks, and so that they don't slide as easy. It's pretty hard to get them to slide, except of course when you want them to stay in place. If you turn around here, I'll show you the brace. There is a type of a clamp here. You can get these at a department store, like a lumber store, in their chain link fence area. This is simply what you would use to clamp the edge of the chain link fence. We took a piece of electrical conduit, smashed the end in the vise, and measured its length from there down to the farthest spar away that we could, the hoop that we could get to. There's a similar clamp at the bottom. What this clamp does is prevents the hoop house from wobbling along its length. It secures it quite a bit. While you're outside, let's go ahead and take a look at the plastic. You buy a roll of plastic. You roll it out on the ground. You have to buy a plastic that's at least as wide as the circumference of your hoop. So you can use the simple geometry of the area of a circle or the circumference of the circle to figure that out. Plastic will come in standardized lengths. This is a particular greenhouse plastic, polyethylene plastic, designed to last well in the summer. This has something like a 5-year rating. We figure that depending on the weather, the wind, and so forth, we might get about 4 years out of it before we'd start looking toward replacing it. So we stretch the plastic out in the ground. It's sort of folded up. We roll it the length. We cut it a little bit longer than the house, and then we grab the corners at each end and just sort of pull it over the hoop. Without the hoops there and the plants in it, you can move inside and grab the edges and help pull it over the hoop. So then we sort of even the plastic out so there's the same amount of skirting laying on the ground on either side. And at that point in time, we fastened the one end to the wiggle wire track and went to the other end of the plastic and tugged it tight. That let us stretch the plastic reasonably taut and then put the wiggle wire brackets, fastened into the wiggle wire brackets to the other side. The cord that you see right here is what then provides the tautness to the plastic. We have where I said the hoop comes down to that stake, we have a washer with like a little S-clip in a hole in it. We put the washer over the rebar stake. We tied this you see 2 ropes. We started on the other side with that. We just bring a piece of cord, again a cord that's supposed to be somewhat UV resistant, over through the hook and then stretched it from this hook on the other side to the base of the next hoop. Again through its hook, coming back over the greenhouse to the base of the adjacent hook. So we hit that particular cord every other hoop as we go down through here. At the far end, we just stretch it from its hook right near the edge of the end of the plastic, and then we come back. So I think it works out well to have probably an odd number of hoops. I think that's what we have. Anyway, if whatever you're doing, you're just going to end up, if you have to tie it off and then start over, bring it down. We have one continuous cord going the whole length. You can find the design for this, or in fact a complete kit for greenhouses similar to this, slightly different size, at a website called Farmer's Friend. We use several of their products. We use the cord. We purchased the cord that we used to tie the plastic down from them. We also got this clever little device here. What this device does is hooks on the rod and you can pivot it out of the way, but when you swing it out, you can slide your plastic sidewall up and then swing this in place and it holds the plastic sidewall up, so we could have about a 2 to 3 foot window of ventilation along the length of the greenhouse. And so in the summer, we open them up more, and of course we have the panels up here open, and then when it gets cold like it did it's starting to get cold here in the fall. Last night we decided to put the sides down. So we pivot the hook out of the way and just slide the plastic sheet down the hoop so to close off that doorway. You'll see all of our tomatoes are hung. Each tomato vine is hung on one of these tomato trellising devices. These come in at least two different forms. One with this sort of wiggly shaped wire with just polyethylene twine wrapped around it. The other I've seen comes with a little hook and a little drum that you can unroll one revolution at a time. This is about 6 inches long. There's about 20 feet of twine on here. What we do with this twine is, okay, you can see these marks here. This is plastic that has been up all summer. It does catch water in it sometimes, and algae grows and so forth. We have just lowered these for the fall here because we're anticipating freeze perhaps as early as this week. I'm going to show you how we put these on and how they work to hold the plastic up or let you raise and lower your curtain. Hold your plastic up is do not cup it to the outside. Cups to the outside. What will happen is if you have a trough in here, the water will run down the outside of your curtain and puddle in here and then become stagnant water pools, encouraging disease and mosquitoes and such. These clips work better, perhaps only on the metal pipe as opposed to the plastic pipe as a spar. I'm going to step into my wife's plant here. She just cut down. So here what I'm going to do is fold the plastic up but tuck it under as I pull it up. I will have to do this the whole length. You will not be able to put these clips in the first couple hoops because the edge of the plastic is anchored at the corner of the greenhouse. So these, you see, there's a variety of ways of doing this wrong, but what you want to do is end up with the short piece underneath and the long piece here. What happens is it grips against the pipe, so weight right here doesn't slide it up and down. Although if you unclamp it just a bit, you can easily slide it up or down. So what you can do is put it right there. If you want more skirt open, we simply slide it up higher. Again, making sure we don't have any troughs that collect water and let it be stagnant. So if we want to lower this, we simply tilt it up a little bit, slide it down, slide our plastic down to that level. What this does is holds this in place, the plastic edge in place, so that as wind vibrates the tunnel, it doesn't slide down. When the plant first grows, when it grows up enough to start not standing upright by itself, we take a plastic clip and put it at the base of the tomato. These are reusable clips. The clip looks like this, and the twine, when we hook it onto the twine, if we put it right at the hinge area, the clip, when we fold it around the vine of the tomato, will clamp the twine in place. So now the tomato stalk is in here. It's not squeezed tight. If the tomato stalk would grow bigger than this opening, we'd probably take this piece off. But by that time, the tomato stalk has lengthened considerably. We've moved our trellising portions considerably up the stalk at that point. So that's what holds the twine onto the tomato stalk as we start the trellising operation. Why do we trellis? We trellis so that the tomato does not lay on the ground for its life. It's a vining plant, naturally vining. We do pruning to encourage the tomato to stay in a single long stalk as opposed to spreading out to a more indeterminate shape. The other reason we trellis is so that maintenance is easier. The portion of the tomato where we're working at here is now above our knees as opposed to below our knees down at our ankles. So we don't have to pick off the ground and so forth. Why are all these tomatoes leaning sideways? These vines, some of these vines are 20 feet or more long, and our house is only, at this point, is only about 5 feet tall. As the tomato vines, my wife will talk about the pruning and how we do some of this, but what happens is at the end of as the leaves start growing up the vine, the new growth is always at the end of the vine. The older leaves toward the bottom of the vine tend to get older, sometimes die off. After the fruiting bodies are all taken care of, all the tomatoes down at that area are picked, we tend to prune upwards. So we end up with a lot of bare stalk. You can see this stalk here is bare. Here, this particular stalk is bare for about 5-6 feet. We have some more down in our greenhouse that are bare, like maybe 10 to 15 feet before the leaves and the fruits are there. So the vine tends to hold them up. By holding them up each individually, we keep them in a long plane, vertical plane to the ground. There's more airlight, more air circulation, able to get all around the plant, so you can avoid some of the dense moisture. Can avoid maybe some of the diseases of overcrowding and so forth. We had put these pipes here, clamped them to the hoops as sort of a purlin. This provides some stability so each hoop doesn't wobble by itself. It was intended that this would also be a support point for our tomatoes as they're on the trellis. I believe one reason my first greenhouse build collapsed is because I had this purlin and this one with about 18 inches of flat space between, letting the plastic catch the snow and sort of puddle down between those, so there's no encouragement for the snow to slide off. On the second build, I just got some 1x2 pieces of lumber. That's the nominal measurement. They actually measure about 1 3/4 by about a 1/2 inch thick. And I simply slid them between the plastic and the spar at the peak of the spar. So now I have the plastic comes up to sort of a peak, goes over this wooden bar, and then goes down the slope of the other half of the circle. But I believe with this wood piece in place, based on what I've seen with rain puddling in the plastic, it has prevented the rain from puddling there, so I believe it will also prevent the snow from puddling at that point.
Hi folks, Ariel over here. Thanks for spending some of your valuable time watching these videos. Hopefully you found something beautiful, educational, interesting, peaceful, relaxing, or useful while you were here. If so, find more videos here, subscribe so you don't miss any updates, and if you like what you found here, feel free to like and share away so that others can benefit as well. You all have a wonderful day.